The Dakota is one of the most iconic and mysterious buildings in New York City. Built in 1884, the stunning red brick edifice sits on the corner of 72nd Street and Central Park West, overlooking the expansive greenery of the park. It's an architectural marvel, with towering turrets, ornate carvings, and a grand, sweeping staircase. The Dakota has been the home to many famous residents, including Lauren Bacall, Judy Garland, and John Lennon. But it's also known for something darker: the legend of the Crying Lady. The Crying Lady is said to be the ghost of a woman who lived in the Dakota many years ago. According to legend, she was a beautiful and wealthy woman who lived in one of the apartments on the upper floors. She was married to a wealthy businessman who was often away on business, leaving her alone in the apartment for long periods of time. Over time, she grew increasingly lonely and isolated, and began to suffer from a severe depression. One day she decided that she couldn't take it anymore and threw herself out of the window of her apartment, falling to her death on the pavement below. Her husband was devastated by her suicide and was said to have never fully recovered from the tragedy. It wasn't long after her death that strange things began to happen in the Dakota. Residents reported hearing strange sounds like the sound of someone crying coming from the upper floors. Some claimed to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman wandering the halls, her face contorted in grief. Over time, the legend of the Crying Lady grew, and her story became one of the most famous ghost stories in New York City. As someone who had always been interested in the paranormal, I was fascinated by the legend of the Crying Lady. I had lived in New York City for several years and had heard the stories about the Dakota, but I had never experienced anything firsthand. That all changed one night when I was invited to a party in one of the Dakota's apartments. The apartment belonged to a friend of a friend, and I was excited to have the chance to explore the building and perhaps catch a glimpse of the Crying Lady. As soon as I stepped off the elevator onto the apartment floor, I felt a strange sensation. It was as if the air was heavy with a sense of sadness, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The party was in full swing, and I spent most of the evening mingling with other guests and trying to catch a glimpse of the infamous ghost. As the night wore on, I began to feel more and more uneasy. The sounds of the party seemed to fade away, and I found myself drawn to a corner of the apartment where a large window looked out onto Central Park. As I stood there, staring out into the darkness, I suddenly heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was the sound of someone crying, coming from somewhere deep within the apartment. At first, I thought it was just a guest who had had too much to drink, but as the sound grew louder, I realized that it was something far more sinister. I turned to the others in the room, but nobody else seemed to hear the crying. They continued to talk and laugh, oblivious to the ghostly presence in the room. I began to feel as if I was going mad, but then I saw her, the Crying Lady. She was standing in the corner of the room, her face contorted in grief. She wore a long, flowing dress that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, and her hair was long and dark, cascading down her back like a waterfall. I could see right through her, but she seemed so real that I felt as if I could reach out and touch her. I stood frozen, staring at the ghostly figure in front of me. The other guests continued to ignore her, as if she wasn't even there. But I knew what I was seeing, and I was filled with a sense of terror and wonder. As I continued to watch, the Crying Lady slowly turned and began to walk towards the door of the apartment. I knew that I had to follow her, that I had to find out what she wanted. I pushed my way through the crowd of partygoers and followed her out into the hallway. The hallway was empty, but I could still hear the sound of her crying, coming from somewhere further down the hall. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest, until I reached the end of the hallway. There, in front of me, was an open window. I could feel the cold night air blowing in, and I could see the lights of the city below. But there was nobody there. Nobody but the ghostly figure of the Crying Lady, standing on the edge of the window ledge. I could feel her pain and her sorrow, her desperation and her loneliness. I knew that she had jumped from this very window all those years ago, and that she was still trapped here, unable to find peace. I reached out to her, calling her name, telling her that it was okay, that she could let go. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, the Crying Lady was gone. The hallway was silent, and the only sound was the distant hum of the city below. I stood there for a few moments, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I knew that I had experienced something truly extraordinary, something that I would never forget. And I knew that the legend of the Crying Lady in the Dakota was more than just a ghost story. It was a tragedy, a tale of love and loss, and a reminder that sometimes, the past is never truly gone. In the years since that night, I have never forgotten the Crying Lady and the experience I had in the Dakota. I know that the legend of the Crying Lady will continue to haunt the Dakota, a testament to the power of the human spirit, even in death.
The Bellamy Bridge is mainly known for the ghost story that surrounds it. The story goes that Elizabeth Jane Croom and Dr. Samuel Crowell Bellamy fell in love and married on May 11, 1837. Elizabeth was dressed in a beautiful gown, and the wedding took place at the Bellamy plantation in the mansion's rose garden. During the reception, she went upstairs to take a nap. While sleeping, the sleeve of her dress had accidentally touched the flame of a nearby candle. Screaming and in a panic, she ran down the mansion staircase, her body fully engulfed in flames. Elizabeth did not recover from her burns and passed away a few days later. Samuel never remarried and became accustomed to alcohol to ease his grief. He eventually committed suicide by slitting his throat with a razor. Elizabeth now wanders the swamps around the Bellamy Bridge searching for her lost husband. Some say she flees down the red clay road to the old iron bridge. Others claim her flaming figure flashes through the mist-shrouded swamps, and still others say she descends from the dark night like a fireball to plunge into the slow-moving Chippewa River. But all agree that what they are seeing are apparitions of a young woman who burned to death on her wedding night. Today, Elizabeth Jane Bellamy's tombstone is the only reminder of the tragedy that took place many years ago. It stands about a half-mile from the river in an overgrown field, near a few crumbling bricks and an old cistern, used to cool food and drinks during plantation days. Around Halloween, groups gather in the haunted area down by the river, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly silhouette. On the anniversary of the tragedy each May, several Chippewa College students keep a midnight vigil. Some claim to have taken photographs of the ghost that reveal a strange white blur. When Elizabeth's ghost appears, questions arise. Does she return to douse her burning body in the river? Is she looking for her stolen jewels? Or does she wander the swamps trying to find and protect her beloved husband? Elizabeth Jane Bellamy's spirit has many reasons to be restless. Located in the cozy town of Eureka Springs, the 1886 Crescent Hotel is known not only for its historic Victorian beauty, but for its active array of spirits. When staying in the Crescent, you'll soon discover the dead may be more alive than you thought, with countless reports of spirits roaming the halls and grounds of both the hotel and spa areas. There's a lot of history here. After operating as a luxury hotel for decades, in 1908 it became the Crescent College and Conservatory for Young Women. But the college mysteriously closed 16 years later. In 1937, a man named Norman Baker bought the Crescent and turned it into the Baker Cancer Hospital. He claimed to have the cure for cancer, using various unorthodox methods of treatment. What was unknown to many of these patients was that Baker's miracle was a scam, and he had no medical training. Sarah Eschel is a ghost tour guide at the hotel and is confident in the hotel's spooky reputation. She believes the spirits are becoming more and more restless with paranormal activity on the rise. There are many ghost encounters reported at the hotel, and Michael is one of the well-known spirits. Michael was allegedly one of the original masons who worked on building the hotel in 1885. While working on the roof, it's said he lost his balance, fell to the ground, and was killed. Now he makes his presence known from time to time in room 218. From the days when the hotel served as Baker's Cancer Hospital, a nurse can sometimes be spotted pushing a gurney on the third floor, while a spirit named Theodora can sometimes be spotted in room 419. She has been reported to courteously introduce herself as a cancer patient before quickly vanishing. Most of them are mischievous at best, they just want to be noticed. So they make loud noises or sometimes do things like shut doors, but they're only doing what their energy makes them capable of doing. Then there's the scariest place on the property, the morgue, also known as the icebox. Tour guide Sarah has had many strange paranormal experiences over the years, but the one standing out above all was when she took a picture of her son standing on the stairs in the morgue. A man was standing next to him whispering something into her son's ear. At first, she thought it was her husband as the picture was a little blurry, but when asked, her husband looked shocked and said, "That wasn't him standing there." The ghosts of the hotel are sure to make themselves known, but what may be most disturbing is the secrets buried beneath the grounds. In 2019, 5 News reported on a shocking discovery. During the construction of a sporting club, crews digging up dirt found glass bottles buried with mysterious medical specimens, believed to date back to when the hotel was used as a cancer hospital. The rumor is that these bottles were used as displays by Baker in the hospital to promote his alleged cures. The mysteries and lore trapped within this hotel make it a unique experience. The haunted Sloss Furnaces, an old steel factory in Birmingham, was founded on June 1, 1871. Its name is borrowed from one of England's principal industrial cities, a choice the founders hoped would herald the town as a great center for America's industrial age. For Birmingham had a characteristic that made it unique worldwide: the nearby deposits of iron ore, coal and limestone, the three principal raw materials used in making steel. This powerful combination of minerals quickly earned Birmingham the nickname the Magic City. James Withers Sloss started construction on the Sloss Furnaces in 1881 on the outskirts of the Magic City, only 10 years after the city was founded. This entrepreneur quickly capitalized on Birmingham's fortunate location and the enormous amount of cheap labor available in the form of freed slaves. To cement Sloss's place in this financial bonanza, he used his wealth and political influence to become the first president of the newly merged Nashville and Decatur Railway Company. His first priority was to expand their railway lines down to Birmingham, thereby securing the exportation of steel made at Sloss Furnaces. While pay was low and hours ran high, industrial accidents were what workers feared most. Some men fell into the molten steel and incinerated, while others fell victim to the silent poisoning of carbon monoxide or the volatile bursts from steam pipes. Every inch of Sloss Furnaces held danger for the workers who toiled there. From the catwalk to the tunnel, the furnaces to the wheel, every precarious step could have been, and often was, their last. Perhaps the most ghastly death is one that befell a worker on his lunch break. Sitting near one of the large flywheels used to power the huge scalding boilers, he leaned a little too close, and the wheel caught his clothing, slowly dragging him into the gears. Witnesses at the time shuddered. Each time the wheel went around, there was a little less of their friend. This wasn't an insulated incident. On September 9, 1887, Richard Jowers was working at furnace number 1. Standing near the top of the furnace, he slipped, and he and the heavy bell he had been preparing to melt tumbled into the molten steel below. There was nothing anyone could do to help, and they stood helplessly by as Jowers was incinerated. It is rumored they were able to remove his head and several bones before his remains were lost completely. At night, this old building, now a national landmark, still echoes with noises from its perilous past. Screams are heard, apparitions are seen, and on the second floor of the blower building, there's the sinister presence known as Slag, an overly cruel foreman who can still be heard belittling his crew. The Magic City was built on the backs of ordinary men, and a great many of them toiled and died at Sloss Furnaces. Perhaps they haunt the ground so the city does not forget their gruesome sacrifice. The infamous Kempton Park Hospital has long been considered to be one of the most haunted places in South Africa. Ever since 2014, Phoenix Paranormal South Africa have been gathering information, personal accounts, and social media commentary on the most haunted and active locations in South Africa. The group, established by Charmaine Roos and Arnaud Dutoit, are said to be a professional ghost hunting team situated in Pretoria and Johannesburg. They use state-of-the-art technology to conduct their investigations in order to look and capture proof of the paranormal. The group make use of high-end electrical equipment to capture evidence of the unknown. As of recently, they found evidence at the Kempton Park Hospital, which consisted of intelligent responses, creepy shadow figures, and a run-in with a very dark entity. Hopefully, the evidence can shed some light on the many mysteries and hauntings of the notorious Kempton Park Hospital. The hospital has become a popular spot for ghost hunters ever since the facility shut its doors in 1996, leaving behind millions of rands worth of equipment that has now been damaged or stolen. It is reported that when the hospital closed, there have been questions about what went wrong, but there doesn't seem to be a clear answer. Just speculation that limited utilization and the wrong location were strong factors as to why the doors were closed. Roos previously explained that it is common for most hospitals to be haunted. It gets fueled by the extreme human emotions people experienced in this place, Roos told Business Insider South Africa in 2019, in turn sparking an extreme residue enough to leave an imprint on the environment and thereby causing unexplained activity. What is even stranger is that the ghosts seem to have traveled out of the buildings right into neighboring homes. One family experienced poltergeist activity whereby their curtains would frequently be opened and their doors would shut with extreme force. Other reports included that of a homeowner finding a trail of wet, childlike footprints all across his house floors. While another family living next to the hospital says they have encountered ghosts of little children who would play with their children's toys. We believe this could possibly be linked to them living next to the infamous hospital. Abandoned buildings are sometimes known for less friendly spirits because they are used to dabbling in the occult. You can watch the creepy full video on YouTube at Phoenix Paranormal South Africa.